All right,
go for it.
we're recording here. We're switching things around today. I'm with Isaac Simpson on the Deep Left podcast. Welcome, Isaac. Thanks for coming
And
on.
also the carousel podcast. And also the carousel podcast. Yeah, well, fuck Manycam fuck Manycam and fucking Restream just totally died, and we were supposed to be streaming, but now we're just recording. So sorry about that, everyone. I haven't been recording very much recently, so that's probably why this just got totally terrible. But all right, well, let's talk this out. Yeah, I guess is this my podcast or your podcast? Whose
You
podcast is
just
this?
take it over. Take it away, man.
Okay. All right. So oh god, here, look, I'm frozen again. There we go. So I noticed that you were writing Substack articles about me, that you somehow found me and you somehow decided that I am a Yarvanite Jewish supremacist of some kind. So I'm actually curious. I mean, since this is my show and you're on my show, I'm actually most curious about. So who are you? You're a guy from Malibu, I believe. Is that right?
Damn,
That's true, or is that fake?
That joke went way too far.
Or not
people.
true. That was not true.
No,
Okay.
I mean,
So who are you?
Oh, I'm just a guy without a job, too much time on my hands writing Substack articles, you know? So
Okay.
I like writing, and I actually saw your note, like it's the equivalent of a tweet basically. And I just saw this, and I see a lot of this stuff, and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere because I didn't know anything about you. I literally clicked on the most recent podcast, like clicked the middle of the video. It's like a 30-minute thing. And I see you and you're talking and you're just getting little snippets of remarks here and there. And so I was like, yeah, I have a vague impression of who this guy hangs out with. So I'll just kind of attack the scene. I don't really know who he is, but I'll say, like, I don't like this scene. I don't like these people. And therefore, just paint with a broad brush and one and done, and we'll move on. And then you responded, and then you said, hey, let's have a conversation. So I was like, well, if he's going to invite me on the podcast, least I could do would be to listen to more than 30 seconds of what he has to say. So I listened to your testimony on Judaism, and I was listening to it. I was like, wow, this is actually, I think, very refreshing and very honest. And vulnerable, and I don't think most people would talk that way. But I actually think what you experienced and what you went through is not like a 1 in a trillion thing. I think there's actually a lot of people who, over the centuries, actually, not even just like since 2016, but there's a lot of people who grow up in mixed families or mixed marriages, and then they have to go through this process of figuring out, okay, who the hell am I? Because nobody really tells you that. When you have a mixed family, it's like the two parents are like, well, I don't know, we love each other, so we got together and now you're here, and it's like, you figure it out, so no one really gives you a guidebook for that. And I just admire that on a personal level. But I do obviously have disagreements. Like, I find that a lot of the rhetoric about mass immigration does more harm than it does good. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying every immigrant is an angel and St. George Floyd and kind of the thing where it's like every criminal, they had it, or like you can even go so far where they say like, if an immigrant does a crime against a white person, that's reparations, right? So obviously people take it in that like malevolent, resentful direction. And I'm not going to deny that there's Pakistani rape gangs or that there's terrible things going on. But I think overall...
You're sure this is recording, right?
We're recording.
Sure. It says recording? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going. No, I'm listening.
Yeah. No, so I'm just like... I just think that a lot of the rhetoric about immigration is hysterical. And I think that MAGA populism is headed in this very, I don't know, white trash is maybe too glib, but it's headed in a direction where everything's very WWE. It's very flashy. It's very punchy. It's in your face. It's like, fuck you, we're America, and we hate communists or whatever. We hate the woke left. But there's not a lot of positive substance. There's a lot of resentment. There's a lot of hatred. And when I use the term anti-white, I mean, I could kind of like unpack my philosophy, but basically, I think that liberal white people are like the whitest people. And if you hate those people, you kind of hate a certain type of white people that I would actually say are like the paragon of white people. And if you embrace like, no, the real white people are like the rednecks or the cowboys or something, I think you're kind of getting away from the essence of things, and you're more looking at like I was listening to the woman you were talking with, and she was like, being an American means apple pie and baseball. And I was like, I haven't eaten apple pie in like 10 years and I've never watched a baseball game. So does that mean I'm not American? And maybe she would say yes, and that's a conversation we could have. But that's kind of how I'd open it, my perspective, like where I disagree, and I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, so you did this interesting thing. Maybe we can just start with this. Is you did this thing where you said, like, okay, it seems to me like you are trying to. I mean, your name is Deep Left Analysis, right? So what does that mean?
I guess the simplest,
like, are you trying to? It seems to me like you are trying to sort of like establish this left wing like identity, not identitarian, but left wing HBD without it being HBD, right? Like you're trying to do left wing sort of race science, but I understand that you're also saying that you're not race science because you're saying it's not genetics. I understand that you don't think it's genetics, but it seems like you're doing the same thing that the right race science people do, which is digging into the racial, super deep into the racial elements and traits and saying, if you believe this, you're racist, if not, etc. Is that kind of what you're doing? Are you kind of doing that?
I'm sorry, I don't even know what that, like, race science without the race science. Like, I mean, you could say I'm trying to deeply understand identity. Sure, yeah, I think that's accurate.
Okay.
The term deep left comes from the term deep state. I came up with that in 2018, and the idea is that, you know, why is it that a lot of people would say that, you know, art is like inherently left wing? Now, obviously, all people wouldn't agree with that, but what does it mean for something to be like deeply left or deeply right? And I got invested in that question, and then started to play with the term and started to experiment with it. And I like it because there's a lot of ways you can define it, a lot of ways you can employ this term. So one way is you could say that there's such a thing as a psychological conservative. So someone who just likes things to be the same. Doesn't matter what it is. And ostensibly, you could get somebody up there who maybe they hold all of the correct left-wing opinions. Like they're like, I use the pronouns and I'm pro-trans and I'm pro all these things. But really what they're doing is they're just kind of following a trend. They're just following a fashion. Like when BlackRock puts up the rainbow flag, are they really in their heart and soul? Do they actually care about that? Or are they just status signaling to achieve some kind of, you know, corporate profit? And so I think that to me is a meaningful discussion to have, because I actually think that Western civilization is different from these other civilizations in that there is this revolutionary component where you're not just looking at tradition. You're not just looking at what do your elders tell you or what's the gossip or what's the fashion. You're trying to engage in a Socratic, Platonic, first principles, tabula rasa. Let's look at the evidence. Let's see reality. Let's try to be objective. Maybe we can never actually be objective. We're always flawed, but at least that's our telos. Let's try to be objective. And I think that's where we get the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment and all of those values. So I'm in favor of that. Like Katie Miller the other day put out a tweet that I thought was hilarious because she said, I'm against this deeply left classical liberalism woke nonsense. And people made fun of her because they said, oh, Katie, you don't understand. Like Ronald Reagan was a classical liberal. So to call Ronald Reagan a deep leftist, which is what she was saying, that's kind of ridiculous. And I said, no, Katie has a point that actually modern leftism ultimately does trace back to classical liberalism. Now, maybe the aesthetics are different and, you can make critiques here and there, but genealogically, yes, modern leftism is an outgrowth. I mean, Curtis Yarvin is correct in his description that wokeism is a product of Calvinism. I agree with his description. I disagree with his prescription, which is that we should go back to monarchism and Tim Cook should be the CEO of America. I think that's a bad idea. I actually like, classical liberalism, and that's what I'm trying to defend through the vehicle of the Democratic Party. It's not an optimal vehicle. I'd like to change a lot of things about it, but you kind of have to work with the two-party system that you have. I think a lot of Republicans would kind of say the same thing about their own side if they're being honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're sort of taking a neo-reactionary lens and applying it from the left. Is that fair to say?
I have a friend, non-Zionism. He calls me a left Moldbugian.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So exactly. So you're taking all of these neo-reactionary sort of principles and you're trying to retrofit them from a left-wing perspective. And what I'll say that I agree with you in is that, white people are extremely naturally, what's the word that you used?
Universalistic.
Universalist. You said ultra tolerant, sort of self-hating, self-critical, whatever that is. With what we think of as white people, they have that trait far more than Jews, although I think Ashkenazi Jews are white, but far more than any other race, right? That's true. But what you tried to pin me up on was this really brazen fallacy, which was whites are, we need a word, universalist. Whites are universalist. Leftist whites are more universalist than rightist whites. All true. But then therefore, if you don't like leftists, you don't like white people. that's way too far. That's called an illicit major fallacy. I actually looked it up. You're saying it would be like saying mammals are hairy, dogs are hairier than cats, therefore cats don't like mammals. You're doing that. You're making a massive jump around it just because you're critical of a white liberal who happens to be super universalist does not mean you're not white, or it doesn't mean you're against white people. You are against a trait of white people, yeah, sure, but that absolutely does not mean that you're against white people. And anyway, by the way, I'm not a fucking monarchist. I like liberal basic also. I mean, like, look, how many Moldbugians have said over time that they like classical liberalism? Right? I mean, a lot of those people think of themselves as classical liberals. So I would say that it's not true that all these people are out there, every one of us who has Jewish blood actually hates the white man. I don't think that that's really fair. And it's also sort of not really logical.
Oh, that's not the point I was making at all. Okay. It's not to say that everybody with Jewish blood. In fact, in that article, I say 70% of Jews vote Democrat. The problem isn't people who are ethnically Jewish. The problem, from my perspective, is that there's a red tribe and a blue tribe in America, and politics is no longer ideological, it's tribal. And so as much as you can say that there are definitely people on the left who are anti-white, I also feel that being white it's not a skin color. If it was a skin color, you'd get a lot of Korean people who are white or something. And it's not even about the phenotype. It's not even about how people look. It actually is about culture. And so, and I have a guy I did an interview or / debate with, Quentin Scobie, over on J-Reg's channel, and he kind of made this funny point. I don't know if I'd go as far as him, but he's like, you can be a non-white white supremacist. And I think we're kind of getting more of that. We're getting more, Mexicans or even black people or whatever, and they're like, hey, I like white culture. Like, stop trying to come in here and hate on white people, right? So I think there is a white culture, and I think that there's an undermining of that culture and an appeal to things that I consider to be superficial. And maybe like, I'll give you another example. There was kind of a debacle on Twitter where over Greenland, where it's like, should we invade Greenland? And then these Europeans being like, this is terrible. This is evil. Why would you do this to us? And then a lot of Americans being like, get fucked. Like, we hate you. You're gay libtards. We'll destroy you. So I think there is actually an anti-white sentiment there. Now, it's a pro-American sentiment at the same time. And the problem is when we're talking about these identities, whether it's racial identity, national identity, there are contradictions, there are overlaps, there are intersections. And I would give you one more thing to chew on would be people like AOC or people like Ilhan Omar. It's like, if they have a white boyfriend, does that make them less anti-white? Not necessarily. It makes them contradictory. But it doesn't negate if they have some kind of anti-white resentment. It doesn't negate that. So people can be complex. People can be simultaneously pro-white and anti-white because we're actually seeing ethnogenesis in America. It's not, we don't have, when people say, oh, we're so polarized, they don't mean actually ideologically polarized. They mean tribally polarized. They mean that there are actually two populations, and statistically, 4% of new marriages are mixed, Republican and Democrat. The interracial marriage rate is like 14%, but, it's only 4%. And so there's very strict political division in how families are formed. And ultimately, that's the basis of identity, right? You start with the family and you branch out from there. But again, listening to that woman on your show where she's like, being American is about watching NASCAR and drinking beer. And it's like, yeah, I don't drink beer and I don't watch NASCAR. So clearly, she and I are part of two separate nations. And whether you call that, who is white or who's less white, okay, well, you could say they're both white, right? But they're both against the other version of the white person. The conservative white and the liberal white have that antagonism.
It's so funny that I literally had this exact same conversation with my rabbi earlier today about this exact same thing with Judaism. But okay, so you're taking one trait of a group, which is culture, and you're saying that culture is the thing. You're saying whiteness is only culture, right? Isn't that kind of what you're saying?
I would say liberal whites are an ethno-religion in the same way that Jews are an ethno-religion, meaning that you could take a Jewish person and you could strip them of their Jewish culture. You could, for instance, adoption, right? If you took an Ashkenazi Jew, didn't tell them they were Jewish, raised them in a white Christian family, and then you never told them anything, but then they grew up and maybe they had some Jewish traits or something, right?
Yeah.
Whether you ascribe that to genetics or astrology, it doesn't really matter. So you can say, okay, it's not just culture. It's not just something. But I would say that the two kind of exist in a feedback loop. And I actually think that to the extent that there are differences between liberals and conservative whites, and I think they're pretty stark, I do think those is it culture or is it ethnicity? I think it's both, and I think they intersect with one another and they feed off of each other and they intensify in ethnogenesis. So 100 years ago, we lived in a different country. We didn't have the same type of divide. Now, you could say, well, there were shadows of it, or there was a precursor in terms of the Civil War, right? You had the Unionists in the North and the Confederates in the South. And actually, the South, you could say, was a kind of proto-nation. Like, if the Confederates won, they would have their own country. They'd be like, we're not Americans, we're Southerners. We're from Dixie, right? That could have happened. So you get these kind of like Schrodinger situations where it's ambiguous. Like, are Southerners Americans or are they not Americans? There was a period where that was contradictory. After the Civil War, it was like, no, they're definitely Americans now. And I think we're in that space now with liberals and conservatives where it's like, okay, are these really one group of people, or are these all just white people, or are these like two very distinct groups that are headed in diverging trajectories, and eventually Like one of them's going to dominate the other one. Like these are not happy people. They're not coexisting peacefully. So one of them's going to win. And I'd rather be in the country where the liberal whites win than the ones where the conservative whites win personally. But at least acknowledging that those are two groups. And it is possible to hate one group or another. Like there are people, I mean, I grew up basically with around a lot of people who hated rednecks. Not because the rednecks even had the wrong politics. I mean, that could have been brought into the conversation, but it's just like, no, we don't like them. We don't like how they look. And it is sort of a caricature of what that person looks like and how they talk. And so I think that is transcends political hatred, and it becomes a form of ethnic hatred at the end of the day. So yeah, I obviously, if you think there's just one big beautiful white race and everything's hunky dory, then no, of course you're not anti-white because you love white people. But if you split things down the middle, then you start to see that actually there are these resentments going on, and I think it's good to be honest about them.
Okay, so then let me ask you this: a Southerner, you know about the whole Albion seed thing, the 4 different folkways.
You had the
this, right?
Puritans and the Cavaliers and
the Scott, the borderers who are the Scotch Irish. So say that there's a country ass Scotch Irish guy in West Virginia who fucking hates liberal white people from Massachusetts. So that you're basically saying that guy's political hatred of the Massachusetts annoying white woman is actually racism.
I think that it becomes a form of ethnic hatred at some point. Like after a certain number of, whether it's chronologically or the intensity of the hatred or in the way that we talk about each other, right? So if you criticize liberals and you say, they're fucking idiots and they're also overeducated. Also, they're cowards who would never protest, but they're also like super woke zombies who will do anything that, it's like if you throw enough shit at the wall, it starts to look like you don't actually hate these people for like, okay, well, here's some things I want you to change about your life. It's like, no, I just hate the essence of who you are. And that's how racism works,
sure,
right?
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. And that over time, with enough of that over time, over enough period, like maybe 1,000 years or something, eventually, or I don't know how long, eventually that's going to become different races, or at least different ethnicities, to the point where you're not just politically disagreeing, you're literally ethnically disagreeing. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I don't think that that's like a wrong perspective. I mean, I think it's wrong to say that like a Jewish person who doesn't like white, doesn't like a white liberal is I mean, it's the same as anyone, right? I don't think it's like, does it make any difference that the person who doesn't like the white liberal is Jewish? Does that change anything?
No, I think you can be anti-white and be a redneck, and I think you can.
But hold on. You're saying whiteness is white leftism, and you're making this argument because you're saying that white people are historically pacifist, maybe not pacifist, but historically very tolerant.
No,
right?
It's not just about tolerance. It's actually more fundamentally about the Faustian spirit, universalism, and being divorced from tradition. Because most cultures throughout the world, if it's Chinese culture, African culture, Jewish culture, it's very much rooted in tradition. If you go to a Chinese person, they will tell you, we're a 6,000-year-old culture. In fact, if you go back to the Platonic dialogues, Plato discusses this problem in the Republic, where there's this little scene where it's kind of a story within a story where a Greek is talking to an Egyptian, and the Egyptian says, you Greeks have no memory. You don't remember anything about yourselves. This is actually part of the story of Atlantis. So he explains how in 10,000 years ago, the Atlanteans fought with the Athenians, but the Greeks don't know about this because they don't keep their history according to the Egyptians. And the story, there's multiple levels to all the Platonic dialogues, but one takeaway is that the Egyptian culture was obsessed with history. They were obsessed with they had a whole class of scribes who were basically the priests who would write everything down, hieroglyphics, and it was an art form, and they worshiped that. Just like in Asia, you have calligraphy, right? So there's this worship of the written word Of course, you have that in Judaism as well. This worship of history, genealogy. King David is descended from the line starting with Adam, and then, and of course, in Christianity, they also reproduce a genealogy, two separate genealogies for Jesus. So it's very important in those cultures, whereas for the Greeks, they are differentiating themselves, and they're saying, well, according to these other cultures, we're inferior because we don't seem to care about that as much. But it allows us to look at things with fresh eyes and to have, a spirit of debate where we can actually kind of think rationally about things rather than just appealing to whatever the tradition says, whatever history says. And so I think that's the starting point. Now, I think that allows you to have a more cosmopolitan outlook, a more xenophilic outlook. You can look at other cultures and be like, oh, we'll kind of take one thing from this culture and one thing from that culture and mix it all together.
Well, yeah, but you could also incredibly say what you just said about Jews. I mean, Jews can make the same argument about themselves all the time. That,
I would make that
we're
argument.
Actually not, it's like we're rooted in the past, sure, but actually we're a combination of all these other cultures and et cetera. I mean, I think you're saying something interesting. Okay, so tell me what this Faustian spirit is all about. Everybody's always talking about the Faustian spirit. What does that mean?
Yeah, the term Faustian spirit, Oswald Spengler used it based off the literature of Goethe. So the story is of a man who basically sells his soul to the devil for knowledge. He wants to know everything. And if you go back to the scholastic period in Europe, they had this idea of the encyclopedia, that you could actually collect all of the knowledge in the world, and then it would be complete, and then you would be finished. And this scholastic period then led to people like Carl Linnaeus, binomial nomenclature. So Homo is our genus, sapiens is our species. And he did this for as many species as possible. And he had all these disciples because he didn't like to travel. So he would send all his disciples out to Africa, to Asia, to South America. And they would actually bring back in boxes, like, here's a rat we found, here's a plant we found, whatever. And he would give them all of these names, and he created a taxonomy, so to try to classify all of reality. And out of that binomial nomenclature, then you get basically early theories of evolution, how, one thing can evolve to another. And that is really a revolutionary way to look at the world, but I think it's ultimately based in Platonic philosophy, which is that there are elemental forms, and out of these elemental forms, you then get emergent complexity, as opposed to the nominalist position that we see in Genesis, which is that God individually made all of these animals and plants, and they're radically separate.
Well, technically, in Genesis, it's man that names the plants and animals. It's not actually God. Well, God creates them, but man names them.
Right. Yeah. So it's a question of basically a static viewpoint, which is that the world is fixed and there is like kind of an ultimate reality that we should just adhere to that, versus a more dynamic view, which is that reality is in flux. Reality is dynamic, and therefore, because reality is dynamic, we as human beings have free will to impose our vision on the world. We can be creators, we can be creative, and we can, invent new things. Now, from a traditionalist point of view, that's degenerate, that's arrogant, and that's where you get the story of the Tower of Babel, in contrast to something like Icarus, where Icarus, it's a very similar story in that Icarus flies too close to the sun and then falls because the wax melts. But the tragedy of Icarus, it's different from the Tower of Babel in that you really are meant to feel bad for Icarus. You are meant to look at Icarus as a Faustian figure, as somebody who was pursuing greatness and then failed. But the lesson of that story isn't, okay, you should never try to do anything cool. The lesson is, actually, it's better to try and fail than to never try at all. Versus the Tower of Babel, it's like it would have been better off if those people just never built anything in the first place because it was
Oof,
all
that's
sinful.
a real stretch. That's a real
Really,
real
you think it was good to start building the Tower of Babel? That's not the lesson I got from it.
But the Tower of Babel was God punishing people for thinking that they could. Oh fuck, I can't exactly remember, but it was a punishment based on idolatry, not so much based on exploration. I mean, look, let me just say, you're scratching at something real. I mean, like, what's the great American book you read? Blood Meridian? Maybe not yet. Maybe you're too young. But Blood Meridian is Cormac McCarthy's masterpiece, and it has this character in it called the Judge. And the Judge is like the manifestation of manifest destiny. And the Judge says everything that exists without my knowledge exists without my permission. So he's basically, and he spends the whole time going around and like categorizing things and capturing them and like drawing them and recording them. And I think you're right. I think there is something about, I mean, I hate these terms, whiteness, Jewishness, blah, blah, blah. But there is something about the white man that is exploratory in this way that perhaps other groups are not. That truly is open to the world and truly wants to categorize and explore and see the world. I mean, there's something kind of platonic about the white explorer in Africa. You know, there's something about that that feels like that's who that is. You know, they like white people, like we're explorers, like we are explorers. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But as a left-wing person, aren't you really destroying leftism entirely? Because you're basically doing what anti-Semites accuse Jews of doing in the Talmud, which isn't really true at all. But you're saying everybody else is basically an animal. And white people are the only ones who have this amazing sort of a transcendent ability, which, right? Aren't you kind of saying that everybody else is basically an animalistic person looking to the past, whereas whites are the only people who can really like see the future? And isn't that like racist as fuck?
Certainly if it's genetic determinism. But I think if you're looking at this from a religious, cultural, spiritual angle, then, I mean, I'm an elitist. So I believe that if your life is beer, boobs, NASCAR, then does that make you an animal in the sense that I want to hurt you? Well, first of all, I believe in animal rights, so I don't believe in hurting animals.
Okay.
And I think I don't care if somebody is like retarded or there's something mentally wrong with them. I don't think we should be hurting, or I don't think we should be sadistic toward anyone. In fact, I'm in favor of abolishing prison. Like I don't want to hurt people for being different, or even criminals. Like I don't believe in vengeance against people who commit crimes. But I think that it is true that if we want to aspire toward a higher ideal of being cosmopolitan and open and adventurous, then a higher ideal necessitates that other forms of life are lower. And, you know, if that is a hierarchy, then I think that's a good hierarchy. Now, what is
whiteness is superior, but it's just not genetic. That's what you're saying.
I mean, I think the Western culture and the white culture, the problem that people get tripped up on is that white nationalists will claim, okay, we like all these things too, and the way that we get them is we kick out all the brown people, and then that's how we get our white culture. And what I'm saying is that actually, if you did that, if you reduce these virtues to mere phenotype or ancestry or genetic testing or something, you're actually going to kill them, because you're making something that is ultimately a choice, right? The Faustian legend, it's not about, oh, Faust was born and his genetics determined him to do it. No, it's about free will and it's about choice. So when you start reducing people through that genetic determinism, you actually lose the spirit, you lose the essence, or you could say the mythos. And what I don't like about those people is that they are self-evidently opposed, and I think of them as anti-white because I think of them as opposed to what made, you know, the West great, which was not let's hunker down and kill anybody who doesn't look like us. No, that's not the story of what made the West great. It's actually like, well, let's consider strange ideas, let's consider foreign opinions, let's kind of get outside the norm.
Okay, I'm following you. You're saying something really fascinating, actually, and I'm super glad we did this because like I'm like I would you're getting to like I can tell you've like thought this out, which is cool. But what I would say is then all you're doing though is shifting that superiority away from genes, which is abstract, to spirit, which is abstract, right? I mean, no, you're like, aren't you just, you're still making the same judgmental sweep. You're just doing the judgment based on some other criteria. You're saying, oh, the people who are watch football are that. And oh, by the way, you know, maybe a bunch of them happen to also have low IQ or be this skin color or be whatever, blah, blah, blah. But those people do not have the divine essence that I have. And aren't you basically just doing that? And then, so why wouldn't you then want to have a society away from those types of people?
Oh, I certainly do not want society to be dominated by beer guzzling, football watching,
Right.
you know, whatever you want to call them, rednecks or something. I don't want those people in charge. It doesn't mean that I want to physically eliminate them or hurt them. It means that I want a society ruled by Ivy League educated, you know, Harvard professors. I don't want a society that's led by populist slop, lowest common denominator demagoguery. I don't like the aesthetics of MAGA, not because I'm just annoyed for no reason. It's because I think that when you send this message, like look at Mark Carney, he's the Prime Minister of Canada. He just looks and talks and acts white. I mean, he is like a professional, put together, educated, intelligent guy. And okay, well, he also lets in a bunch of immigrants. Okay, I don't care about that. What I care about is what is the spiritual leadership of our civilization? And in someone like Donald Trump, I think of him as like a Castizo Cadillo or something. He is sort of importing these third world, or you could say second world values into America. He admires Vladimir Putin. He says, yeah, North Korea, they have a strong leader. I like that. I like it whenever. No, it's like we don't want to emulate that form of civilization, that authoritarianism.
But isn't the great thing about the white man? You know, I'm not a racist, by the way. I'm actually not a racist. So I'm probably less racist in a way than you are. I mean, I don't think white people or Jews, for that matter, are like better than anybody else. But what I will say is that I do agree with you that manifest destiny or Faustian spirit, whatever you're saying, that is part of the white soul for sure. And that thing, though, relies on the darkness of the primitives. That thing, the whole beauty of a white adventurer is that he goes to the heart of darkness and comes back. That's the whole fucking point. What is so great about America? What is America's, you know, at least in the top 5 of our cultural exports ever? Music, right? Undeniable. Can you deny that American music is absolutely dominant on a global scale, right? Is it fucking Swedish music? No. It's not fucking Swedish.
There's
music.
a lot of EDM out there.
That's true, though. Actually, no, you're right. Actually, they are going to win in the end. But for a long time, and all that shit came from black people, all of it, pretty much. I mean, I'm not saying it was done by them, but it was. I
could give you a counter argument. The counter argument is that black people speak English, and the black accent is a Southern accent, and the black diet is a Southern diet, and soul and blues music is actually Scotch-Irish. It actually comes from the Highlands, and so it's not in a cultural sense, it's not descended from any known African culture. There's been people who just assert that, but if you actually like were to feed an AI, you were like, here's some blues music from the 1920s. Tell me which genre of music this correlates with the best. To be like, oh yeah, it comes from like Irish folk songs, basically.
It's a very nice thought, but not realistic. There is no recordings of a Scotch Irish guy playing the blues on his porch. There is of black people. I mean,
We
and
have
even
the
before
gospel
that,
music, though. We have the
even
melodic progressions. We can look
even,
at sheet music and compare them one to
yeah,
one.
they do, and they do look at that, and nobody does those blue notes in that way with a Spanish guitar. And anyway, even before that, you have Scott Joplin and whatever doing the piano. You know, like that's fucking a black guy. Like all that shit is
I
fucking
understand
black
that
guy.
his skin color was black, but I'm saying that the history of music, that music is from
But
black
you would
people.
not have viewed him as a highbrow person. He would have certainly been within your category of people that are undeserved of time in the sun because he wasn't educated. He was just some schmuck. Right?
Well, I'm in favor of immigration, so I'm in favor of bringing over people who don't have anything and coming here and
why?
making something
Why?
of themselves.
But aren't they just the masses?
No, the thing about immigration is that we have 8 billion people in the world, and most of them live under governments and institutions, even the private sector, societies that just don't work very well. And obviously, there is a risk when you bring in people that they might not adapt, they might not assimilate, they might commit crime, whatever. But I think on net, you're really unleashing the potential of a lot of those people. And I think that the numbers kind of bear out if you look at, a Chinese person in China right now, I think GDP per capita is $13,000 per year. A Chinese person who comes to America is probably going to make $70,000 per year. That's a massive increase in wealth, and I'm in favor of that. I mean, obviously you can say, oh, well, is it really all just about money? You only care about money. But I don't know. I think that you can do a lot of cool things with money. I think that if we want to go to the next frontier, I mean, we've explored the planet Earth pretty much. If we want to go further, I think, we're going to need to have a lot of productive forces, and that's represented by capital. It's represented by wealth. So I'm totally in favor of where we can unleash productive forces, let's do that. I'm also in favor of let's go to other countries and try to make those countries better too. It's not a one-way street. In fact, I think bringing immigrants here actually helps create global connections that influences those other countries that will make them better. I don't think it's a one-way street. I mean, obviously, we can get into the details.
When you call yourself a globalist elite, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what I can't reconcile, all this is great. What I can't reconcile is this with leftism. It just doesn't make any sense. You're everything you're saying is elitism. Best of the best should coalesce in a certain place. There should be no borders between anything. There should be no economic protections for the common working person. So how is that left? Where does the leftism
Well, we're going to take.
happen?
I think we can very easily take care of people with all the wealth that we're generating. I don't think anyone has to be homeless in America. I don't think anyone has to starve anywhere in the world. I think we should solve global hunger. I think
charity is not a left or right wing thing, but plenty of Christian right wing charities give money to the homeless. That's not giving free money out that's not leftism. That's charity. That's a different idea.
You know, you're saying that, but I think most people would say that USAID was a leftist project. And that's what
okay. That was such a logical jump you just did. I think you can't just say that. That's not fair. You can't just pick one charity, or not even really a charity, and say that that's charity. What I'm saying is,
no, I'm not advocating for charity.
Feeding the homeless, feeding the hungry is not leftism. That's not what leftism is.
Okay. Well. So you're saying all I'm saying is you're saying like. You're not leftist. I'm saying, okay, I support USAID. And you're like, well, that's not leftist. It's like, all right, so what level of communism do we have to go to before it's sufficiently leftist? Because I'm not talking about charity. These are government programs.
Okay, so all right, so maybe what we could say is you are leftist in that you're pro big government.
I'm pro the deep state as well, which I think is, at this point, you could go back 100 years and you could say, well, in this particular paradigm, I guess you would have to vote Republican because blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying in 2026, where we're at, Donald Trump is the head of the Republican Party. It's probably going to be J.D. Vance next. Whatever. In the current paradigm, I lean more with the Democrats. And over the broad span of history, going back to the Enlightenment, like there are legitimate people, and I won't just pick on Curtis Yarvin, but there are people like Nick Fuentes or whatever who are actually like deeply right wing. Like they believe in tradition. They believe that the age of consent is a fiction or whatever. Like they believe in all these crazy things that, and you know what? God bless them. Like they have their principles. I might disagree, but that's a real position that people have. And on that level, I am left wing. So there's the contemporary politics, 2026, I'm with the Democrats. There's the 2,000-year view of history, which I'm with the Enlightenment. I'm against the traditionalists. So in that sense, I really do think that classical liberalism is deeply leftist. Now, things have changed over time, right? You have to kind of situate yourself where you are in history. If the year was 1926, I'd probably be communicating differently. I'd probably have a different brand or something. But I think it's appropriate, given the moment that we're in right now, for me to communicate my ideas. This is what I really believe. I'm not just like trolling people or whatever. But yeah, this is what I believe, and I think this is the best way to communicate it. Now, could someone kind of like try to take my talking points and say like, oh, well, I'm an anti-Trump Republican and I want to like reform the Republicans so we can be more globalist and elitist? Like if someone wants to do that, God bless them. Like I'm happy for them to do that. I'm just saying on an aesthetic level, that's kind of repulsive to me, and I'm not optimistic about that either. I think the Republican Party is going to get even more Trumpian after Trump goes.
You're saying Trump MAGAism is repulsive to you.
Yeah, I think it's very superficial.
like aesthetically repulsive.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Like when Erica Kirk went out, I just instinctually, I'm just like, no, if you are a grieving widow, like go be a grieving widow. Like don't have a rock star concert. This isn't cool.
You didn't like when the little girl sung Ave Maria? You didn't love that? No, dude, look, I get it, man. MAGA is not like an aesthetic movement. I mean, the hat was sick, really. It was genius. I mean, as a branding guy, it was fucking amazing. But beyond the hat, you're right. But on the other hand, you know what's fucking way more disgusting than a fucking MAGA is a tranny. Have you ever fucking seen a tranny, dude? They're horrible.
I've done interviews. I've done interviews with trans people.
Look, again, I don't blame trannies themselves. I don't blame transgender individuals themselves. I don't think it's their fault. I'm not like saying I hate them, but I am aesthetically disgusted by them. Absolutely. And we're talking about the communism. Communism is an anti-aesthetic, a communism of aesthetics. You would have to admit that a communism of, have you ever been to Cuba? It's fucking a nightmare, dude. It's horrible. The communism destroys aesthetics. It destroys beauty. That's the fucking point. It brings everyone down. It brings everybody down to the same base, shitty ass, brown, like not brown in skin color, just like brown aesthetic level. That's what it does. So okay, let me just ask this. As somebody who is an elitist, who believes in the Faustian spirit, what do you think about the free market?
Oh, I'm a neoliberal. I want, let's try to get the regulation minimized so that the economy can allocate resources. Now, of course, there's places for things like the CHIPS Act. There's places where the government can help invest. I absolutely believe we should make our public universities better funded. We should have more research. So I think there's a role for government to play in the long-term economic investment. But I think that a lot of the, zoning law in America, I think, is bad for the economy. I think that there's a problem when it, there's certain, you could call it communist doctrines that are not super helpful. They try to micromanage the economy. They try to get these outcomes via bureaucracy, and I want to strip away that in some places. But I also think there are other places where I look at the quote unquote libertarian or the, what was it, Doge? Like Doge was supposed to save us money. It didn't save us money. It accomplished political goals, which is they saw USAID as a leftist form of the government, or there were a bunch of leftists in there. So they said, well, we'll fire all of them. And they achieved that political goal. And I think it was a bad one, but I don't think they actually shrunk the budget at all. I think the budget's just as high as it was before. So I think that a lot of the goals of neoliberalism can be better achieved through the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party at this point is less friendly to tariffs and it's more friendly to immigration. And if you want a good economy, then you have to have freedom of movement and freedom of people and goods. So I think that's the better choice. Now, is it perfect? No, I don't love everything Mamdani says, but I think that it's better on net.
Isn't eating hand rice with the hand? That's disgusting. So isn't basically what happened that this I hate saying the word project, but this neoliberal project basically started as all these things that you're saying. It's USAID used to be a great strategic advantage, right? We went into Africa and we gave them a bunch of money, and then we basically, leveraged that to get them to do what we wanted. It was debt. It was a debt system. There's a great book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman, all about him working for USAID and doing this. I mean, he's a lefty, big time lefty. But what happened is that the neoliberal part of it fucking got totally undermined. Isn't that what happened?
With USAID, it undermined neoliberalism?
The neoliberalism. You're saying you are a neoliberal, a free market, elitist, like in all these ways. And I can see that going up through the neocons, going up through where USAID used to be. But at a certain point, it shifted and it became actually leftist, particularly like biologically leftist. And suddenly you started seeing where used to be beautiful people on billboards, you started seeing big fat black people on billboards with no arms. And every commercial is now a person with no legs. And suddenly everybody's fucking obese as fuck. And the food supply is shit. And blah, blah, blah. And you can't talk about it. You can't say certain words now, blah, 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 because that's offensive. Isn't that all the ideas of neoliberalism basically going to not neoliberalism, but to communism and to actual Marxist destruction of the very freedom and of the freedom to be beautiful, the freedom to have your ideas, to explore, to do all those things? Isn't that basically what happened? And they just went too far. They just went too far. And Trump was basically a response to that.
I mean, when you look at obesity rates, I think the left has a better rate than the right. And I think
sure, but again, all these people are just animals anyway, right? It doesn't really matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, aren't they all just, I'm saying, according to you, not really worth like interacting with? I mean, like, aren't they sort of non-white, as you would say, culturally?
I'm losing track of what you're trying to pigeonhole me into here. You're saying that the left is disgusting. And the left has trannies and fat people and people without legs and they're black and all these things, and therefore we should join the right because the right is beautiful and aesthetic and it's bringing.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, I don't know what you're saying. I don't get it.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have said that you're an elitist, that white people have the Faustian spirit. You have the Faustian spirit. You believe in the free market. And you believe in the free market because this allows, I would assume, people to chase this Faustian dream. right? And as you've said, it allows the cream to rise to the top. You want pro-immigration, you want no borders because you want to give the opportunity to people to excel and chase the Faustian spirit, right? I mean, I think we're in agreement with that. So what I'm saying is that was occurring for a certain amount of time, but then at a certain point, the free aspect of that stopped, and all of the freedom started being enforcement of a level of mediocrity. So it started being the Civil Rights Act, not used to make it so that everybody was free to pursue what they wanted, but to discriminate against successful white people, which, you know, my friend Jacob Savage obviously proved in his piece. So what I'm saying is, didn't it just all this neoliberalism, all this white universalism, whatever these words you want to say, didn't that turn a corner to freedom suppression, to suppression of the Faustian spirit? Do you think that happened?
Well, when we get away from the aesthetics and we get more into like affirmative action, then sure, yeah. If you're saying that we are going to, like, if we were to replace every white person with a black person, regardless of their skill or acumen, and just say, okay, well, white people aren't allowed to have jobs anymore, something like this. You know, South Africa is an example where they have this Black Empowerment Act where, you know, you have to have so many black people on the board of directors in order to operate in South Africa, right? So that kind of identitarian, race-based, you can call it wokeness, you can call it communism, race communism, whatever. Obviously, I oppose that. I don't want to import those South African norms to America. And I think that what people are confusing, or they're mixing together a lot of different things. What I would be, and I am happy that the Trump administration has attacked affirmative action. I don't think we should have or need affirmative action. I think if there's some kind of reparations, that should be done via cash. It shouldn't be done by taking people who are not qualified and putting them in positions they're not qualified to be in. So I'm happy about that, but I think that on net, the attacks on immigrants, especially on H-1Bs, sends a very mixed message. It's like, do you actually want the best person for the job, or is it we want, you know, more Americans to have jobs, and those foreigners are stealing our jobs and taking our jobs? I mean, that's the same thing that people who are in favor of affirmative action would say, right? They would say, oh, well, these white people are stealing the positions from the black people or something, so we need to have this structure to fix that. So I think just honestly let people employ other people however they want to, and don't try to micromanage that. And if there are these racial gaps and you want to try to solve that, the best way to solve that is to, like, make sure that people have housing, make sure that people have food. Don't try to, like, force people into positions in companies. And again, by the same token, don't tell Silicon Valley, like, you're not allowed to hire immigrants, because that's not going to make us competitive. So,
yeah. So your question to me is, why would I be against H-1Bs?
Well, I'm just discovering now. Are you against H-1Bs or not?
Yes, I am. But the reason for that is for, like, anti-dumping reasons. It's what I always say to globalists. This is what I always say to globalists. If you want to actually give me a plan for a global system, great. Like, fine. Like, if that's, I like that you're admitting I'm a globalist. I think that that's good. And I think that that's, like, will lead to this next chapter. I think that that's fine. I think if somebody wants to say, okay, look, we have the inertia now, we can have a single world government, we can have one system, and that's what we're doing, then I'm totally open to, like, having that discussion for the exact reason you just said, because people should be free to hire whoever the fuck they want. You know, it's true. They really should. In a base moral, you know, vacuum, people should be able to hire whoever they want. But America is Valhalla right now. America is the Valhalla that you want. It's the closest thing we fucking have. And if we allow in a fucking bazillion billion Indian people who are going to be paid 50%. By the way, the H-1Bs, it's not like they're making no money. They're making like 30% less. You know, they're making, and on a balance sheet, if you look at those balance sheets, 30% less for my company, it wouldn't make any fucking difference. Like, who cares? For their company, 30% less is like $17 million, even for like a small mid-sized company. So of course they're going to take that $17 million benefit, right? So it's like the problem with doing that labor, you know, it's like the one ring. It's like, it's very Faustian in the sense that you're making a deal with the devil. If you're going to make that deal, you're going to destroy the country over time. And America is going to become India. And then we won't have our amazing system here that allows for the Faustian spirit to rise above. We won't have white people anymore. We'll have India. You know, we're not going to have, we won't have all these things that we want that make this country great, because we're going to be completely overtaken by the third world. Now, look, if you had to ask me what's going to happen, that's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's there's really no possible way of fighting it. You know, I'm against H-1Bs because I want to preserve what we can. I'm a nationalist. I think America is, again, the Valhalla that everybody wants, and there has to be some limits to the immigration. I mean, the borders were closed from 1920 to 1965, which was great. That was good for the country because you need to keep things kind of somewhat practical. In the long run, though, we're headed to a one world government. And that's what's going to happen. It will happen. It's just a matter of how long that's going to take, who ends up sort of scrambling their way to the top of that one world government, et cetera.
Wow, I mean, from my perspective, you sound more optimistic than I do. I don't think that's inevitable. I think that I don't see like China and the EU and America teaming up to form a super one world government anytime soon. And I do think that America right now is kind of the center where the battle needs to be had. And yeah, I mean, on your point about elite immigration coming in, changing the country, well, we did that experiment prior to 1924, right? We brought in a bunch of Jews from Russia. Did the country become Jewish and Russian as a result? You can make that case if you'd like.
Not in these numbers, though, man.
No, I mean, we had numbers. Yeah, actually, in these numbers,
there's not even that many Jews in the world.
No, proportionately, the high mark of foreign-born residents in America was exactly the same within 1 percentage point 100 years ago as it is today. So yes, we did have the same proportion of immigrants coming in just as fast, and obviously it led to the 1924 Immigration Act. So I'm not saying that, in some ways there are political limitations to how fast and hard you can push these things. I accept that. But I think that the H-1B issue, because there's so few of them, I mean, we're talking about a very small number of people in comparison to the overall amount of immigration. I think that you are disproportionately harming the economy in favor of basically what are like racist attitudes. Like if you want to limit immigration, yeah, okay, there's some kind of cap or whatever, some kind of selective process, seal up the border. Okay, like I can understand those things, but attacking like how many H-1Bs are there in the country right now? What is the number?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Is it millions of people?
Zero. There should definitely be zero. No, I mean, also they take advantage of the whole system. It's like 85% Indian. If H-1Bs were really genuinely going for the best of the best, and we were actually paying them a competitive wage, whatever, et cetera, I'd be like, fine, great, do it. But that's not what's happening. It's totally taken advantage of by Indians. It's just a total slop.
That's communist language. When you say Indians are taking advantage, no, they are taking opportunity. They are coming here to work. They are not coming here as like welfare parasites or something. They are coming here to work. I don't care if they're rocket scientists. I don't care if they're working at McDonald's. If they're working a job and they're getting paid 30% less, that doesn't hurt me. People who say, well, it's hurting the American worker, we can have that conversation.
It hurts you because it hurts your Faustian spirit.
I think that when we talk about the cultural...
It hurts your whiteness, doesn't it? So let me just... Wait, I can boil this down. Do you think that all the Ellis Island immigration that ended in 1920 was all Western Europeans or Western or Eastern Europeans who are white? Do you think that those people have the same potential to change the culture of America as a Bantu Sub-Saharan African?
You're talking about 1%, and you're talking about something that has very little to do with H-1B when you talk about Bantu Africans. So
I'm just saying, but theoretically, okay, let's bring it to Indians. Is an Indian person closer, the same distance as what you consider whiteness as a European?
I would say that the Jews who are coming from Russia, who became extremely influential, and all their descendants are now, 30% of elites. I think those people at that time had a culture that had less contact with America than most of the Indians that are coming. And the reason for that is that, first of all, the Indians who are coming, they've been speaking English since they were in primary school. They went through the legacy of British colonization. Christianity has been in India for, 1,000-something years. So they've been in contact with the West. And obviously, there are differences there. I've studied Indian literature. I understand that it's a different culture. It's not something I've never investigated. But I think that there was a huge amount of culture shock of Jews coming in to New York City, which is the effective economic capital of America, the media capital of America. And they had incredibly different values. And most of them ended up becoming communists and starting Hollywood. And they introduced a lot of different cultural values. Did that create conflict? Yes, it did. Now, we're kind of almost coming at this from two opposite ends. One is, are immigrants really assertive and aggressive, and they're going to come in and they're going to force their culture and they're going to change the culture? That's kind of one prediction. The other prediction is actually that immigrants are really like lame and passive, and they just do whatever we tell them to do. And that's a very opposite critique, and it's not one that I hear very often. But I think it's actually more accurate to say that a lot of the immigrants who come to America, they're not coming here to be like, ooh, we have a secret plan to build giant statues to Vishnu and we're going to force everyone to be Hindu or something like that. No, I think actually they come to America and they're like, hey, bro, check out my Gucci and check out, they're like too materialistic. They're like too conformist. They're trying too hard to gain status. And so it ends up kind of being ridiculous. Now, these are kind of cultural critiques that I accept, but I think the alternative, the opportunity cost of saying, no, this is too scary, this is too dangerous, they're going to drag us down. Here's what I think white people need to do. White people need to stop being cowards. They need to stop saying, oh, okay, we're not racist, but we're kind of afraid you're going to change our culture. No, if you're white, stand up for your white culture. If that's something you value, just come out and say it. Don't hide behind, oh, well, it's the economics, or, oh, I'm just afraid. No, don't be afraid of people coming in and changing your culture. Assert your culture. You need to be aggressive. You need to defend your values. And even if we banned all immigration today, the country is still, the young people are 50% white. This is just kind of baked in the cake. We're a multiracial country. If white people want to survive their cultural values, their identity, they need to learn to assert themselves. And that's not something the government can trick them into doing. Stephen Miller is going to trick...
But that's exactly what Trump is. And you're saying that's bad.
I'm saying he is trying to sneak white identity through tricking people, through saying, okay, well, we're not ever going to be explicitly pro-white, but what we'll do is we'll shut down immigration, and then we'll secretly save the white race, and it will kind of wink and nudge and everything. And I'm saying, no, that's not a good idea. I'm saying if you want to actually assert white identity or preserve that, you need to do that so explicitly, because if you keep using this dog whistle tactic that they think this is the only way to do things, then you are cowardly, and you are breeding a cowardly race of people. If you actually want to stand up for your people and what you believe in, you actually have to, at the end of the day, say that. You can't continue to cower behind, oh, well, really, we're just kind of afraid of things changing too fast. And yeah, eventually we'll have a global government, but it's just too scary right now, so we need to hold off. It's like, no, that's not the Faustian spirit at all.
I'm not saying we should have a global government. I'm saying we will. I don't want to have one. I think it's going to be terrible. I think that's destructive of all of the beauty in life, which is the differences between cultures. And that's actually why I reject what we're dealing with globalism is the erosion of culture. That's what I don't like. Look around. You go to fucking, dude, Charleston, South Carolina looks the same as Portugal. It's all the fucking same thing now. It's the same stores. It's the same. Everybody talks in the same voice. It's the Dugan is great on this. It's the total erasure. It's the total erasure of the things that make people beautiful, which is the differences between them. What the globalists want, in my opinion, and again, I don't think this is a globalist like you. I'm not pinning this on you because I don't think this is what you want. But I think the globalist force, what is all there? It's always, they dream of a world where everybody talks like basically like white woman in HR, but they like wear a hijab and they are, they're like a big black guy and they're a blah, blah, but they all actually are the same. They're just superficially different flavors, because then I can walk down my walkable city and I can go to 3 different restaurants that each have a different flavor, but actually everybody's a rich white woman, basically. They're not actually any different. That's what terrifies. That's what I hate about globalism, is that's what the globe looks like. That's why it's like, I remember a few years ago, like the Taliban, like a couple of people were like cyclists were like cycling through Afghanistan and they just got like killed by the Taliban. And I'm like, I'm totally on the Taliban side of that one, because it's like, fuck off. Stop cycling through fucking Afghanistan. Like, leave the cycling to California, So that's what I'm saying. I don't think it should be a single world government,
I am totally in support of the cyclists, and I want people
cycling everywhere.
I believe in total cycling supremacy and total cycling dominance over the globe. Yeah. And I don't like the Taliban, so I don't have any sympathies toward the Duganist position. I think it's just
Russian. I mean, I'm not a Duganist. I'm not a Duganist, but I do. I'm not a Duganist because I'm not a third worldist. But I do like I like his thing on that one thing, which is like, what is fundamentally the leftist globalist people. They want to make everything an optional thing. They want everything to be like a genre. Oh, I'm my tastes on my porn thing. That's who I am. I am what I want. Right. But you're not who you want. Like all the beauties in life are things that, I mean, sure, there are some things you can change, but I don't think you can change your gender. Like, I think that is such a toxic ideology. Like in my mind, it's very like anti-human.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to force gay people to be straight. I don't see that as like a worthwhile project. I'm not interested in like what you just said is like, oh, you can go to a foreign country and then you can have avocado on toast, and it's the same avocado on toast you would get in New York, and it's all the same and everyone talks the same. And it's like, to me, that superficial level of diversity is not interested. Like, I'm not interested in the Taliban. I'm not interested in like anthropologically, we could learn something by studying different cultures. But I don't think prescriptively my goal is cultural diversity for the sake of cultural diversity. And I think what's wrong with the picture that you described, which is like, oh, this person's eating avocado on toast in a hijab, and this one is eating avocado on toast and they're a black man. It's like that level of superficial diversity I don't value. And I think the solution is not to say like, okay, well, we're going to force like the Indians to be Indian and then the Americans will be American. I think the solution is actually we need more risk taking. We need more boldness. We need adventure. We need
Right. I agree.
We need to have and to me that really because we're kind of in this state where we've discovered the whole world and there's almost a suffocating effect to that. Like there's no new places to explore. And I think the way that we overcome that is through science ultimately, is by investigating, I think genetic science is and biotech generally is an area where there is a lot to be explored. There's a lot to be discovered. It's obviously ethically frightening, the idea that we could like clone human beings. We can already do that. We're not allowed to do that ethically. But I think that is the next frontier. Again, whether you like it or not, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think that ultimately beyond the current AI craze, that's where humanity is going to go, is we are actually going to be defined by our desires. And, one person's going to say, I want a high IQ baby. The other person's going to say, well, I want a male model baby. I want a looks maxed baby, right? And so if you allow people the freedom to use those technologies, we're effectively going to end up with more diversity. Because people don't all want the same things. Some people...
Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree with you. To me, a decentralized world is far, far, far better than a globalized world, right? I mean, it's like, because then people will be able to go deeper into whatever weird shit they want to do. Whereas now, it's like, again, if you cut off the welfare state, I'd be pro-immigration. If you took welfare out of the equation and took it back to where it was when Jews and Irish came here, whereas if you fucking died on the street, you died on the street. There was no special check that you got. I would be 100% for it. I mean, maybe not 100%, but I would be a lot more for it than I am now. The issue is the control. The issue is that you can't let the fucking Taliban or whoever do their thing, because you have to fucking have it be like, this is a big BAP thing. You have to have everywhere be perfectly lit so that women can be safe, right? It's like when you do that, that is the most culturally imperialist thing you could ever possibly do. That is true cultural imperialist. That's the pinnacle of white colonialism, isn't it?
Awesome. Like, yeah, awesome. I'm more pro-white than you are. Ergo, boom. I don't know what you want me to say.
Because you just said that that's totally destructive. You want a handicap fucking thing on every elevator in the entire world?
I don't see what that has to do with immigration, to be honest with you.
No, but I'm saying didn't you just say you want people to explore more, to go deeper, to go all that shit, right?
Yes, I'm not concerned with the corporate advertising, which is obviously dedicated to the lowest common denominator. I don't want to micromanage that. I'm not interested in defining my experience by, oh my God, did you see this corporate ad where the person is handicapped? Like, I don't obsess over that because I don't define myself by what the average person is consuming. I think what is important is that we create a society in which those who want to go beyond the average, and there always has been an average in every society, ancient Greece, Sparta, Rome, whatever, the average person has always been mediocre. That is just a law of nature. And so I am not talking about, oh, we need to drag the average person kicking and screaming out of their comfort zone and make them into a warrior and an explorer. No, I'm saying we should have a system that allows the people who do have the Faustian spirit, who do want to go beyond the average, beyond the mediocre. It frees them. It allows them to do what they want to do, and takes off these shackles. I consider the tariffs, I consider the immigration restrictions to just be limitations on people's freedom, and I don't think that Donald Trump coming in saying, no, we're gonna force. We're going to bring America back and we're going to get rid of the woke. I don't actually think that's going to solve the underlying problem, because the underlying problem there is not it is the people themselves. It's like, I'll give one example. People say AI slop is terrible, so we should ban AI. And I say no. The reason why AI slop is because it's based off the average median human being. That's the training data. It looks at what people produce and it condenses that and it outputs that. So if you want to have less AI slop, you need to have a less sloppy humanity. And the way we achieve that, I think, is you actually do allow people to do what they want to do. And if somebody wants to go be gay and be handicapped or whatever you're talking about, let them do that. And then if somebody else wants to create something great and glorious, let them do that.
And if somebody wants to be not gay, you also have to let them do that.
I'm letting you do that, man. I'm not stopping you
you're
from...
not. You're not, because you're demanding, again, that your society be tolerant of these categories. You're saying, this religion that is completely anti-gay, they now have to be pro-gay, right? You're not, like, again, you're not allowing, if I want to run a company in America, not hire fucking immigrants, not pay welfare, and watch people die in the street because I don't give a fuck about them and I have no empathy, I'm not allowed to do that. Right?
You are allowed to not hire immigrants. There is no law prohibiting you from discriminating against immigrants.
I mean, in the model of globalism, there has to be constraints, because if there's not constraints, you have the Taliban killing cyclists, right? Which is you're against.
Yes, I am against the Taliban killing cyclists.
I'm saying, so then you're not actually really for allowing people the freedom to do their thing.
This is like a paradox of tolerance thing. This is like, yes, obviously I'm against the Nazis doing the Holocaust. Okay, so I'm against the Nazis having the freedom to do the Holocaust? Yes, I am. I am a liberal. I am in favor of a system of universalism where we have the maximum freedom possible. Does that mean there are going to be constraints on murder and rape? Yes, there will be. That doesn't mean that we're not maximizing freedom.
Okay, so you do agree, though, we can agree, that a company that wants to be entirely white men should be allowed to do that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So what if that leads to a society where women can't get jobs?
Women have always had jobs the last 10,000 years of recorded history. So that would be what you're suggesting here. And this is kind of like a Helen Andrews thing where she believes that women are only in the workplace because of these like anti-discrimination laws. And it's just not true. I mean, we have IQ data on women.
You don't work in the workplace. You don't know.
I used to. Back in the day, I used to do that. But obviously, I made the Faustian choice to be a Substack writer. So that's how I...
That's just so Faustian, man. Amazingly Faustian. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up. I think, we probably agree on most things. I think ultimately my final statement to you, and then I'll let you get the last word, is that you can't... You're seeking... the same things. We're seeking the same things. We're seeking freedom, beauty, the manifestation of the human will to overcome obstacles. We all want that. Look at which party actually stands for that. The left, the communist, destroys that. Have you been to Cuba, man? You got to go to Cuba.
I'm not in favor of communism, and the critique of Hillary Clinton is not that she was a communist. The critique of Hillary Clinton is that she was a neoliberal. That is what Donald Trump arose to respond to. He said, no, we're not doing neoliberalism. We're having tariffs. We're having restrictions on immigration.
In equal part, he arose as a response to woke. In equal part.
But woke is not the same thing as communism. It's woke capital. It's woke neoliberalism. It's
biological Marxism.
You're not even HBD, so don't talk to me about bio-Leninism. I don't want to hear this two sides out of your mouth of like, oh no, I love black people, but the left is really like they're bringing in the dregs of the genetic refuse. It's like pick a side and argue consistently.
But my side is that black people should get to do black people stuff well. which
I
is
don't
not the
think
same as
black
white
people should be able to rape and murder if that's what you're referring to. I think they should have to
Okay,
conform
no,
to white
fine. They
norms.
shouldn't be able to rape and murder, but they should be able to behave. Nobody should be able to rape and murder. But I'm just saying they should be able to conduct. I don't view them as less than. I don't view the common person as less
That
than.
is so inconsequential to me. It's just moral signaling. It's like, oh, well, see, I'm the true
I'm just saying how I
egalitarian.
feel. No, I'm just saying how I feel.
Okay, but
I'm not
to
saying
me,
what's
it's
true.
not substantive, and it doesn't matter how I feel about this group or that group. What matters is, do we have freedom, and which side is for that? Is it the side that says, let's close the borders and let's have tariffs, and also we're going to, have all this corruption, and we're going to invade Greenland, and we're going to disestablish NATO for Dugan and all these things? Or is it the side that says, hey, we like neoliberalism. Yeah, we don't like the Taliban. And we're going to have an orderly system in which if you're a mediocre person, you can go do that. If you want to excel and do something beyond that, we want to give you the freedom to do that too.
Okay, then call it liberalism. Don't call it leftism, because leftism is not that. Leftism is controlled outcomes. That's not what, if you want to say I'm a neoliberal, I'm like, okay, I get it. But a leftist is a person who controls all these things like very deeply, right? Isn't that what a leftist is?
We are going to have control. We are going to control the world, and we're going to do that through an efficient system. I'm not in favor of micromanaging every decision, but it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in control. I think that, and the Chinese have acknowledged this, is that actually if you want to have a good economy, don't have all these crazy communist micromanage it, just let the free market do its thing. That doesn't mean that the CCP doesn't control China. I believe in the deep state. I believe that we should have a strong Harvard, we should have a strong CIA, we should have a strong FBI, and we are going to do cultural imperialism, and we are going to take over the world. I think that is the vision.
So you're a fascist. So you're actually what you are is a fascist, because the Chinese are fascists. That's what they are.
Okay.
And they protect themselves. All right, I got to go. Dude, this was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the, I'm not leaving because of you. I just genuinely have to go to a meeting. But yeah, thank you for your time. And this was great. And will you just please send me the file?
Sure. Yeah. Google Drive or something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, just send me a link and I'll download it.
Okie dokie. Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk. So thank you so much.
Yep.
I'll tell you
Bye-bye.
later.